What are you doing?
Europe doesn't want tourists anymore.
Yeah, he's actually right. Over the past 5 years, there's been protests against tourists all over Europe.
In Barcelona, they're squirting tourists with water.
In Amsterdam, there's even an ad campaign asking tourists to stay away.
Let's find out why Europe is seemingly biting the hand that feeds it. What puts us in a unique position, we are Americans, right, who have been and continue to be tourists.
Right.
But we also have lived in Germany for over 10 years, so we are on the other side of the coin as well as the residents of a very touristy city, Berlin, right?
Correct.
So we're actually seeing that side of the coin as well.
I do get annoyed with tourists as well sometimes, but not to the level where some of these cities have even done anti-tourism campaigns or actual locals doing things to tourists.
And I think the biggest one we have to bring up, because it's kind of the most in your face, is Amsterdam's. They're not shameful about it at all.
They're not.
The campaign kind of slogan is "Stay Away." It was aimed at mostly men, 18 to 35. A pretty harsh commercial.
I mean, to be fair, I get it. A lot of men 18 to 35 are pretty annoying.
That's pretty annoying.
It's aimed more for people, who are there for stag nights or bachelor parties. Just pretty much going there for the tourism of drinking, getting messed up, going to the red light district, and kind of just causing a ruckus.
A city who you think of like, oh, Amsterdam relies on tourism, right?
Right.
And it has a campaign that is literally telling tourists to stay away.
It's kind of interesting because I've been to Amsterdam before. It's a beautiful city, but even as a tourist, which I think every tourist is that, I was annoyed by a lot of the tourists because it's incredibly overrun. And when I was there, I thought what it would be like to be a local here. And it's like you can't even go to the grocery store without bumper to bumper foot traffic. And I can totally imagine why it's annoying. Luckily in Berlin, we don't have that problem.
Venice also has a campaign which mostly involves a tourist tax. Thousands upon thousands of people jumping into Venice every day, just sometimes for a few hours, just for the night. But now they, even just this year, have doubled the tourist tax. So now if you don't register in advance and you show up as a tourist just to check out the Grand Canals or whatever, you have to pay a €10 fee just for the privilege as a day tripper.
Totally. If you don't pay that fee, you get actually fined a lot more money. I know if you traveled a lot around Europe at all, generally there always is a tourist tax at hotels. You pay the hotel fee. There's always
but it's usually like $1.50, 50 cents, like
exactly.
a
a few euro tax just for being a tourist, which doesn't really bother anyone. It's always a privilege to be able to go to other countries and visit other places, so you should have no problem paying a little extra to be there.
That you usually pay at a hotel. So if you did a day trip to a city, you could avoid that tax. But this you cannot avoid because literally they're going to have police officers going around.
Is that what's happening? I'm wondering how they're controlling that.
Yeah, like they will do random checks to show your receipt that you have paid this tax, and if you haven't, then you get, I think it's somewhere between 50 and a €300 fine for not paying tourist kind of entry fee, which kind of like they don't want to seem like Disneyland, but they're kind of making themselves like that with ooh, buy a ticket. And Barcelona, I think, is also and I think a lot of cities in Spain in general have come to despise tourists and have actually been
like squirted at with squirt guns. There's videos online of tourists who are sitting down eating outside at a restaurant and locals come around with squirt guns and squirting them.
Like, I get you have a problem with tourism, but just because I booked a weekend to come visit you, I don't think gives you the right to really squirt me. But I get the frustration.
Assault, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, in the U.S. it would be assault.
Yeah, it's true. And you probably made also this picture of it's like tourist or luxury trip equals my misery or something like that.
It's a very famous graffiti that's like representing this kind of like anti-tourism movement that's going on in Barcelona and I think Madrid and elsewhere.
Right.
Because they're just feeling completely overrun. Speaking of overrun, if you know anything about the Alps, you've probably heard of the quaint little Austrian village of Hallstatt.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I've been there personally.
Never been.
About maybe 10 years ago. It's gorgeous. People go because it's what in your mind you would imagine a picturesque, small little alpine village to be on a lake with steep, snowy mountaintops around you,
It's like everywhere in Switzerland.
Yeah. So a lot of people go there for photos, especially selfies. And Hallstatt recently, the mayor of Hallstatt erected a wooden fence along the lake line so people, and tourists, could not take selfies or take pictures of the beautiful scenery.
I mean, it's brilliant. It's a brilliant idea. And I'm sure it worked. And also keep in mind, if I remember correctly, I think Hallstatt has a population of like 800 people, and they get tourists of, I think, tens of thousands a day in the peak season. So just imagine that you are a huge minority in your own town, and that sucks.
Venice only has 50,000 actual locals, residents who live there.
That's a tiny,
Yeah.
tiny,
Venice,
tiny amount.
Venice is a tiny place. If you ever go there, honestly, like I would never recommend a week in Venice. You can do Venice in half a day. But anyway, that's a different story. They have over 3 million tourists visiting every year.
Empathize a little bit. Imagine living there and just trying to do your normal everyday life things.
Wait, but all these cities, all these countries, they depend on tourism dollars. So aren't they kind of biting the hand that feeds them? And what would you say to that?
I would say yes, or like they say in German, jein.
Jein?
It's a
Ja,
complicated
jein.
yes.
And we know how complicated it is because, like we said, we lived in Berlin. I've lived here 13 years.
I've been here for 11.
11. So we've been here a while. It's been a while. So we've seen the situation, but Berlin does vary a bit from your Londons, your Parises, your Romes, for one reason that the way that Berlin is laid out, it doesn't have one distinct city center
Like an old city, like a lot of European cities have too.
Exactly, an old town that that 90% of tourists for sure are going to have to hit, and then they hit maybe stuff on the outskirts,
Right,
whatever.
because remember, Berlin was made up of a bunch of little towns that kind of got built into one city, and it was like very famously bombed a lot.
And divided by the Berlin Wall, etc. A lot of our landmarks are very spread out, so I think we don't have very specific areas where we just see insane amounts of tourism, other than things like the Brandenburg Gate,
Alexanderplatz,
Museum Insel, which is an island where most of the main
popular
museums that the tourists for sure would.
Unter den Linden.
Yeah, Unter den Linden, which is like the main avenue which leads toward Brandenburger Tor. Those areas, yes, you will encounter a lot more. Potsdamer Platz,
East Side Gallery.
Potsdamer Platz, I got hit by a tourist, my bike broke my arm, so.
Which again, I think we talked about before. I don't know why Potsdamer Platz is a tourist there. There's nothing there. It's pretty boring.
It's pretty boring. So yeah, tip, don't go there.
So in my, let's say every day, I say in German, my Alltag, I don't see a buttload of tourists in my area. On the way to work sometimes, I pass through touristy areas for sure. It just feels like more people in my way going to everywhere I go. I don't really feel that like my area is being taken over by tourists.
One of the main reasons why these cities don't want tourists, Airbnb.
Airbnb. Yeah, I think Airbnb is a huge catalyst for a lot of these problems. And the reason why I say that, if you really kind of think about the business model of Airbnb, it's used to be, I'm gone for the weekend, I'm renting my apartment for the weekend, someone can live there until I come back.
Right. I'm on semester abroad, and why would I pay for an apartment I'm not in?
Right.
Yeah.
But now it kind of turned into people, investors, buying apartments only for rentals. Pretty much to buy an apartment to make it a hotel, which gives one less apartment for a local to live in. And that we've seen in Berlin, that you see all over Europe, and it's a giant problem.
Right.
Yeah, and people can't live, in the city they grew up in, and of course that's, not nice.
Yeah, and the problem is when you do find an apartment, now prices are skyrocketing because you have people who are renting out their Airbnb for say $100 a night, right? So theoretically they can get $3,000 a month for an apartment that to a local normally would be only $1,000 a month. You know, he thinks, okay, I can rent an Airbnb for $3,000. Well, if I'm going to rent to a local, I'm not gonna rent it for $1,000 anymore. I'm gonna rent it much higher because and he sees his friends renting their apartments for much higher through Airbnb. So I'm gonna jack that price up. And Berlin has been a historically very affordable city, except for the past 10 years as things have gone up for various reasons. But one of the reasons has been this competition with Airbnb shooting up the prices.
And luckily the German government did something to step in to limit Airbnbs in all of Germany, which was a great move. And it did alleviate some problems. Now there's a whole bunch of other slew of problems not related to Airbnb. But that's for a different video.
And again, there's nothing wrong with being a tourist, with enjoying the local shops, with going around. It's just, you need to realize that it's not just you, it's you plus the other thousands of people that are there every day. And that's what the person sees. They're not angry that you're traveling, that you're enjoying their city. They're angry at the kind of the multitude, the
macro, not the micro.
Yeah, the micro, not the exactly, perfectly said. Yeah.
And now you read all these stories of a lot of locals who live in Venice having to move to the mainland because they can't afford to live there anymore. They're too annoyed to live there, even though they grew up there.
It's not the tourism itself. It's kind of the way it's being done. It's the kind of disrespectfulness, the lack of mindfulness that people live here. People live their lives.
Right. I can imagine you start like a heavy drinking habit. Speaking.
Right.
Whiskey.
Let's do it. Whew, that's better. Cheers. Much easier to talk about tourism now. One of the big problems that countries are trying to solve currently, say in France, where's everyone going to go?
Eiffel Tower.
The Eiffel Tower, the Notre Dame Cathedral. They're
Go to the Louvre.
to the Arc de Triomphe. So in a lot of cities, they have these singular sites that every single person is going to. And of course, that's causing jams, it's causing traffic jams, that's causing a lot of issues.
Public transport can't handle the people riding the trains. Again, people trying to go to work or actually live their lives. Can you imagine you're on the way to work? It's an absolutely full train and you're just trying to read your book, get to where you need to go. And then a group of tourists come in, start screaming and yelling and they're drunk. Remember, you're on vacation and that's hunky-dory for you, but most people around you are not. This is their place of living and not a place of Disneyland, you know? Okay, Jeff, with all of this in mind, what can I do, Mr. Jeff, to be a good tourist?
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
And keep in mind, this is just our advice from what we've gathered from all of our travels.
We're no professionals on anything.
So take this with a grain of salt, but it's a pretty big grain. Now, first is find alternative sites. Now, I can understand why people, like we said earlier, go to Hallstatt. It's beautiful. It's amazing. But as you also said earlier, the Alps are huge. Do you want to go to Hallstatt and just be surrounded by a bunch of tourists clicking away on their phones and stuff? No.
Do some research. You can find there's so many great spots. And also, different countries to visit. If you're coming to Europe, you don't always need to go to Paris, to Rome, to Berlin. You know, there are a lot of other cities and countries to go to. The Balkans are great.
Eastern Europe, I mean, Slovenia is beautiful and has its own Alps, which are gorgeous and about half the price. So
Right.
why not head over there?
So do some research. I mean, if you really want to go to a place, of course, you know, go there. But if you are in these, you know, big places, don't be that stereotypical, like, ugly American. And it is a stereotype, unfortunately.
But for a reason.
reason.
Yeah. You know, Americans we're loud, and they think nobody's listening. God, you're in Germany, like you have to be culturally. I'm not saying there's not a discussion to be had, and Germans will have discussion with you.
Right, yeah.
But it's like, don't be on the Bahn telling loud Hitler jokes because you know.
And also, what you read in history book was actually something experienced here, so it's not funny. So just don't be those people. It's not nice, and no one wants to go out and enjoy their night while hearing so bunch of loud tourists screaming.
And you guys are blaring, you know, Taylor Swift or whatever, you know, having a good time. Just be mindful, and like you said, like
Jeff trying to be hip.
Yeah. People like the
People like the Swift.
People like the Swift. Yeah.
I've read this. We do too. We love the Swifts.
Because you're going to see differences, right? There's going to be culture shocks. When you move to Germany, tons of culture shocks.
Right.
Even now, when I visit other countries, there's culture shocks, right?
Always.
So just be careful how you say them.
Pointing out differences is part of the fun of traveling. You just have to do it in a respectful way. Like, I remind myself that as well, you know? I like to always try to treat wherever I'm traveling as if I am home.
You're giving a bad rap for America or UK or wherever you happen to be from, right? Especially if the person hasn't even been to your home country, but like now they don't want to anymore because they're like, these people, all they want
That's
is...
how you don't get tourists to come.
Right.
You go be a tourist, be an asshole, someone comes back to your country.
Sure.
That's the trick. That's a big brain move.
But a positive way of taking the local culture is if you are in Germany, learn like 5 words of German. Like instead of saying thank you at the restaurant, say danke, say vielen Dank, danke sehr. You know, like people
always learn a few phrases.
People do appreciate that. Like when you just like you try, because again you're showing this isn't Disneyland to you. This is a place that you're visiting, and you've taken some time out of your day to like
respect it.
You learn a few words.
I mean, you know, a great example. When I went to Paris, people say they're not really friendly towards tourists, and especially Americans. So I was kind of a bit nervous. I tried, or with my partner, we tried to speak a little bit of French to them, and everyone was super nice.
All right.
We had no problems.
They're talking behind your back, trust me.
I'm sure they were. Not to my face, long words. That's what I care about, you know.
In the end, it sounds weird, but the problem has grown to the point where there are European countries and cities that are actually turning away something that is a big part of their economy, right? So that means the problem must be to a point. Like when you're like refusing money, it must be a big problem. It must be affecting the locals at this point. So I think we all just got to slowly take like a note of that. Be respectful, be kind, and just try to be the best tourist we can. Because like, you know, I love traveling. I'm not gonna stop traveling. So I'm just gonna like do my best to that I can keep doing it.
And you know, like I said, traveling and being a tourist is a privilege. It's not a right. We all want to have new experiences, learn new things, and meet new people. So let's do it in the right way so tourism doesn't go away completely.
Right, exactly. Because again, we don't be stuck at home all the time. So
no, it sucks.
You know, and I also don't want to be stuck with this, or do I? What do you think?
Yeah, it's good.
Right. And you know what else is good? Hey, if you guys like what you're seeing, go ahead and hit the like button. Go ahead and hit subscribe. That'll help us a lot. And go ahead and check out our other videos. Like up here, you'll find one in which we checked out a fake Taco Bell in Germany. What am I talking about? I don't know. Gotta click that.
So anyways, stay safe, stay healthy, and of course,
Stay thirsty.
or unter den Linden. So too fast. Or unter the, it's hard to say. Or unter den Linden. I can't say it without mumbling. Unter den Linden. Unter den Linden.